Captain Armon Qureshi never imagined that one ordinary morning would change the entire direction of his life. For almost 15 years he had served in the Navy with quiet dedication. He was not the kind of man who chased attention or tried to impress others. He simply believed in doing his job well. But because of his calm nature, many higher officers often overlooked him. Promotions came late, and important missions always went to louder, more political people. Armon accepted it with patience. He had joined the Navy for the sea, not for glory. The waves, the wind, and the sound of engines had always made him feel alive that morning. He arrived at the naval base with no expectation of anything unusual. The base was buzzing with its usual routine: sailors jogging, officers shouting orders, helicopters taking off for practice flights. Armon walked toward the command building, holding his file and greeting the guards politely. As he entered the hallway, an assistant officer rushed up to him, clearly stressed. "Captain Qureshi, the Admiral wants to see you immediately," the young officer said. Armon frowned. The Admiral rarely called him directly. Something felt strange, but he nodded and walked toward the office. When he entered, Admiral Rahim Khan was already standing, hands behind his back, looking out of the big window that faced the sea. He turned slowly when he heard Armon step inside. "Captain, we're assigning you to a new command," the Admiral said. Armon blinked. He had not requested a new ship, nor was he expecting one. "Sir, a new command." "Yes," the Admiral replied, sliding a folder toward him. "You are now the commanding officer of PFSSR." Armon opened the folder. The name sounded familiar, but only from rumors. Some sailors whispered about a secret research warship, something extremely advanced, something the Navy had been developing quietly for years. Many believed it was just a prototype that could never be used practically. Others thought it was too risky, No one had ever sailed it in true open waters, sir, with respect. "Azad is still in testing, isn't it?" Armon asked cautiously. The Admiral nodded. "Yes, but the testing phase is complete enough. The ship needs a steady, disciplined captain, someone who won't misuse its potential, someone who follows orders." Armon understood the unspoken message. They didn't want a flashy officer who might boast about the ship or try to push its limits in a reckless way. They wanted someone quiet, someone dependable, someone like him still. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being placed somewhere deliberately away from important areas. Perhaps this warship was more of a burden than an honor. Maybe they wanted him out of the usual fleet operations and into a semi-secret project where he would remain unseen. But Armon did not show hesitation. He simply nodded and accepted the assignment. When he first stepped onto the dock where Azad was stationed, he stopped for a moment, trying to absorb what he was seeing. The ship did not look like anything else in the Navy. Its body was smoother, almost like it had been carved rather than built. There were no sharp edges, no bulky weapon mounts, no visible radar dishes. It looked simple, but there was a strange power in its silence, almost as if it was sleeping, waiting for the right person to wake it. His new crew stood waiting for him, only 40 people instead of the usual 100 plots that other warships carried. They looked unsure, maybe even a little nervous. After all, they had heard the rumors too. Armon introduced himself with calm confidence. "We will learn this ship together," he told them. "No one has all the answers, but we will treat this vessel with respect, and we will trust each other. That is how we will operate." The crew nodded, visibly reassured. Armon took his first step onto Azad's deck, and it felt strangely light, as if the ship was designed to float differently. As he explored, he saw advanced systems everywhere: touchscreen control panels, automated maintenance modules, and a power core room that glowed faint blue behind armored glass. Engineers explained to him that the ship used a hybrid propulsion system, something far more silent than any other vessel in the region. In the control room, he placed his hand on the main console. The ship responded with a soft hum, lights gently turning on as if greeting him. For the first time, Armon felt a connection to a machine. This warship wasn't ordinary, it felt alive. Still, Armon sensed that this assignment carried something hidden. Why give him such a powerful vessel if he was only supposed to patrol quiet areas? Why station the ship far from the main fleet? Why send such an advanced ship with such a small crew? Days passed as the crew familiarized themselves with Azad's training sessions, operational checks, emergency drills. Everything was performed carefully. The more Armon learned about the ship, the more he realized how different it was. The weapon system was capable of locking onto targets much faster than any destroyer. The self-defense system could intercept incoming threats so precisely that the margin for error was almost non-existent. Even the engines had a silent mode, allowing the ship to move without creating a detectable wake. Some of the crew whispered that this ship could defeat an entire squadron by itself. Others believed it was too experimental, too unpredictable. Armon listened quietly but did not let rumors distract him. His responsibility was to understand the ship, not judge it. One evening, while standing alone on the deck, looking out at the sea, he felt a gentle breeze on his face. The sun was setting, painting the horizon in shades of gold and orange. He thought about his past missions, how he had always worked in the shadows of bigger names, louder officers, and more aggressive personalities. Now he was standing on a ship that might one day change the future of naval warfare. but he felt no desire for fame. Instead, he felt the weight of responsibility. Something told him this ship was not given to him by accident. Perhaps the Navy saw something in him that he didn't see in himself. Perhaps this ship needed a captain who believed in purpose, not pride. The next morning, HQ sent a new set of orders. Azad was being deployed to a disputed zone, but only for observation purposes. The order specifically said not to engage, not to intervene, and not to draw attention. Armin felt uneasy. Why send such an advanced ship to simply observe? Was there something HQ expected to happen? Or were they trying to test Azad's systems in real conditions without admitting it? He gathered his officers and shared the orders. Some were confused, others frustrated. "Sir, this is a warship," one of the officers said. "Why are we being sent just to watch like tourists?" Armin replied calmly, "Our job is to follow orders. We will observe, but we will also stay prepared." When Azad left the harbor for its first official mission, the crew felt both excited and nervous. The ship moved smoothly across the water, silent and elegant. As they reached deeper into the open sea, Armin stood on the bridge, watching the radar screens flicker, feeling the gentle hum of the engines beneath his feet. Little did he know that this quiet mission would soon become the most critical moment of his life, and the moment that would to reveal what Azad was truly capable of. For now, he only knew one thing. He was responsible for a ship that could change everything, and for a crew that trusted him completely. Whatever waited for them in the disputed waters, he would face it with the same calm strength that had carried him through his entire career. He did not know yet that this journey would not only test his courage, but also rewrite his name in history. Even though he never sought such recognition, all he knew was that he had been given a ship unlike any other, and somewhere deep inside, he felt that their real trial was coming soon, something far bigger than any observation mission HQ had mentioned. The sea ahead looked calm, but Armin had been a sailor long enough to know that calm seas often hid the biggest storms. And this time, the storm would not be made of wind and waves. It would be made of steel, fire, and decisions that would shape the fate of nations. The first few days of Azad's mission seemed peaceful, almost too peaceful. Captain Armin Qureshi kept a close watch on the sea around them, but everything looked normal. The sky was clear, the waves were gentle, and the radar screens showed only fishing boats and merchant ships passing by. Still, inside Armin's mind, a strange tension slowly grew. He could not explain why, but something about the silence felt unnatural, almost like the sea was holding its breath. The crew tried to relax, but even they sensed something unusual. Azad was not an ordinary ship. With every mile they traveled, its advanced sensors picked up tiny patterns in the water, faint signals in the distance, and encrypted messages floating through the air. These details would normally go unnoticed by older ships, but Azad collected everything silently in the background. On the morning of the fourth day, Armin noticed the first sign of trouble. The long-range radar displayed a faint cluster of signals far beyond the horizon. They were too distant to identify clearly, but they were moving together, in a formation that only military fleets used. Armin leaned closer to the screen, his calm face hiding the slight tightening in his chest. He called Lieutenant Sana, the ship's radar specialist. "Look at this," he said, pointing at the slowly shifting dots. Sana studied the signals for a moment, adjusting the sensitivity settings. The radar sharpened, and the faint echoes became clearer. "Sir, this looks like multiple ships, at least 10, maybe more." Armin knew she was right, and he also knew that this was exactly the kind of movement HQ always worried about in disputed waters. But something felt very wrong. A fleet of this size usually sent out communication pings, warning signals, or at least routine updates. This one was completely silent. The crew around the bridge exchanged nervous glances, but Armin stayed steady. "Maintain our distance," he ordered. "Don't alert them. Let's observe quietly." Hours passed, and the unknown fleet continued moving steadily toward the border. Azad remained far, watching from the edge of radar range. Every now and then, the signals paused for a minute, then moved again, almost as if the fleet was checking its surroundings or adjusting strategy. By late afternoon, a new problem appeared. Communications began to crackle. The secure link with HQ suddenly grew unstable, fading in and out, like someone was interfering with the signal. Armin tried to contact the command center, but the messages only half transmitted. "This isn't natural interference," Sana said quietly. "Someone is jamming the frequencies." Armin's expression hardened. A jamming operation of this scale could only be conducted by a large fleet. It meant the enemy wanted to hide something, and the only reason to hide was preparation for an attack. He tried contacting HQ again. "This is Azad reporting possible hostile movement. Repeat. Possible large-scale fleet approaching." The message cut off sharply, replaced by static. Armin exhaled silently. They were alone. He turned to the crew. "Record everything. If we can't reach HQ, we will build our own picture of what's happening." Azad's senses activated fully. Screens across the bridge brightened, collecting data from hundreds of miles away. The enemy fleet signals became clearer. 12 destroyers, 3 missile frigates, and at least 1 command ship, a force large enough to strike an entire coastline. The crew stared at the numbers in shock. One officer whispered, "Sir, why would such a large fleet be here? This can't be coincidence." Armin didn't answer immediately. He walked to the large window at the front of the bridge, watching the open sea. "Because they are planning something," he finally said, "and they think no one knows." Just then, a small alarm beeped on the console. Sana rushed to check it. Her eyes widened. "Sir, the fleet has changed formation. They're spreading out, like they're entering attack posture." Armin's heartbeat skipped. Attack posture meant one thing. They were preparing to cross international waters. If they did, conflict was guaranteed. The safest option was to retreat, to move Azad far away and leave everything to the main navy. But Armin knew retreating wasn't possible now, not because Azad couldn't outrun them, but because leaving would mean no one would witness the fleet's exact movements. HQ had no visuals. Their communication was jammed. If Azad didn't stay, the country would be blind. He took a slow breath. "We hold position. Azad stays at the edge of range." The crew nodded reluctantly. They trusted Armin's judgment, even if fear flickered behind their eyes. Night approached, and the sea grew darker. The enemy fleet continued advancing steadily. Through binoculars, the crew saw faint lights on the distant horizon, ship outlines moving like shadows across the water. By 9 p.m., the jamming intensified. The radio fell completely silent. Even satellite links grew unstable. It was like a curtain had fallen around them. Now Azad was not just alone. It was isolated. Armin stood in the center of the bridge, arms crossed, thinking deeply. His officers watched him quietly, waiting for his decision. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind, but one truth was clear. The enemy fleet was preparing for something far bigger than a simple show of strength. "Sir," Sana said softly, "if they keep moving at this speed, they'll reach the border within an hour." Armin nodded. He expected this. "Prepare full sensor sweep. Let's see every detail." Azad's sensors scanned the entire area. The results were alarming. The enemy ships had armed their weapons. Missiles were loaded. Guns were ready. Torpedo tubes were active. This was not a drill. This was not intimidation. This was war preparation. The crew felt the shift. Immediately, the quiet tension of earlier became sharp fear. Azad was alone against a fleet designed to break through defenses. Yet Armin did not panic. His calmness spread through the room like a stabilizing force. One of the younger officers whispered, "Sir, if they find us, they'll attack." Armin turned to him. "Then we don't allow them to find us." "Not yet." With silent propulsion, Azad repositioned carefully, moving deeper into the shadows of the night sea. The ship left no wake, no vibration, no sound detectable on enemy sensors. It became a ghost watching but unseen. Even now, Armin tried one last time to contact HQ. Static answered him again. He lowered the transmitter and looked at his crew. "We are the only eyes here," he said slowly. "If the enemy crosses the border tonight, the country won't know until it is too late." The crew realized the weight of the situation. Azad, the ship no one trusted, the ship everyone underestimated, had become the only hope for early warning. The minutes ticked by, painfully slow. The fleet grew closer. Their patterns became aggressive, their movements bold. "They were ready to strike," Sana said suddenly. "The lead destroyer has turned directly toward us. They might have detected something." Armin stepped forward and looked at the radar. The destroyer was adjusting course little by little. The movement was subtle but meaningful. "They're searching," Armin said quietly. "They know someone is watching." Azad tightened its stealth systems. Lights dimmed. Engines hummed at ultra-low output. The ship became almost invisible to sensors. But the enemy fleet was getting dangerously close. Armin made a decision that would shape everything that came next. "Crew, listen. We will hold position. We will monitor every movement, but prepare for immediate action. The enemy will cross the border soon, and when they do, we may have to make a choice." No one asked what that choice would be. They already knew. Azad was the only ship here. If the fleet attacked the coastline, Azad would be the only shield, the only warning, the only resistance. Armin looked around at his crew, ordinary people who had never expected to face a fleet alone. Yet here they were, silent and steady, trusting their captain. He turned his eyes back to the sea. The enemy ships were like dark mountains moving across the water. The night grew colder. Everything slowed down, like the world was waiting. And then the moment arrived. The enemy fleet began its final approach toward national waters. Azad remained still, a lone shadow in a vast ocean. Armin felt the weight of destiny settle on his shoulders. The real battle had not begun yet, but the storm was already forming. And Armin knew that the decisions made in the next hours would decide everything: the safety of thousands, the fate of the coast, and the true purpose of Azad. The sea was no longer calm. It was holding its breath again, waiting for the first spark that would ignite the night. Captain Armin Karashi stood in the center of Azad's bridge, watching the enemy fleet continue its slow but deliberate approach toward national waters. The sea outside was completely dark now. Even the moon hid behind thick clouds, as if nature itself didn't want to witness what was about to happen. Inside the ship, every person felt the same tension. Something huge was coming, something that would test all of them in a way they had never imagined. The enemy ships were now close enough that their lights, though dim, showed faint outlines against the horizon. It was a frightening sight, so many ships, moving together like a giant steel beast. Azad looked so small in comparison, like a single drop of water beside a storm. Armin kept his eyes on the displays. The enemy fleet had entered the last stretch before crossing into restricted waters. If they crossed that invisible line, it meant war, and Azad was the only ship standing between that fleet and the coastline filled with civilians who had no idea what danger was coming. Lieutenant Sana monitored the radar. "Sir, they're accelerating slightly. They'll cross in 20 minutes. Armin closed his eyes for a second. 20 minutes. That was all the time he had left to make the most difficult decision of his life. He tried again to contact HQ. The signal didn't even respond. The jamming was complete. They were cut off entirely. The crew waited silently, each one aware that their fate depended on what Armin did next. He could order the ship to retreat. Azad was fast enough to escape. If they turned around now, they could vanish into the dark sea. No one would blame them. The enemy fleet was massive. Facing it alone was madness. But Armin couldn't do it. He wasn't afraid for himself. He was afraid for the people sleeping peacefully in towns along the coastline. They were innocent. They trusted their country's defenses. They believed someone would protect them if danger came. Yet tonight, there was no one else. Only Azad, only him. He took a deep breath and addressed the crew in a steady, calm voice. "Listen carefully. The enemy is about to cross into our waters. We cannot reach HQ. There is no support coming. If they cross the border, they will attack the coast, and there will be no warning." The crew looked at him, their faces a mix of fear and determination. Armin continued, "We have two choices. 1. We retreat, stay safe, and let the fleet continue. Thousands of people will be in danger. 2. We hold our ground, activate Azad's full systems, and confront them. We may not survive, but we will stop them." The room went silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Armin wasn't giving them a false promise. He wasn't saying they would win easily. He was telling them the truth. They were facing a fleet of warships with only one vessel. Finally, Lieutenant Sana spoke, her voice soft but strong. "Sir, we joined the Navy to protect our country. If we run today, then what was the point of all the training, all the sacrifice?" Another officer nodded. "Azad is the most advanced ship we have. If any ship can stop them, it's this one. I say we fight." One by one, the crew voiced the same choice. Not a single person asked for retreat. They trusted their ship. They trusted their captain. Armin felt a quiet emotion rise inside him. These 40 men and women were ready to face an impossible challenge without hesitation. He nodded slowly. "Very well. Prepare the ship for full activation." At that moment, something changed inside Azad. The screens brightened. The power core hummed louder. Systems that had been in standby mode began to awaken. For the first time since its creation, the ship was being activated to its full potential. Armin placed his hand on the central console. "Initiate full combat power." Azad responded instantly. The entire ship seemed to breathe, like it had been waiting for this moment. Alarms flashed briefly as advanced systems came online: rail cannons, missile interceptors, electronic warfare shields, rapid targeting sensors. The ship was transforming from a silent observer into a beast of war. Even the veterans on the crew stared in awe. They had never seen technology like this. Azad wasn't just advanced, it felt like a ship from the future. Armin studied the data quickly. The ship's offensive and defensive capabilities were far greater than he expected, far more powerful than HQ had ever told him. It made him wonder why the Navy kept Azad hidden. Why did they fear revealing it? But he pushed the thought aside. Tonight, none of that mattered. The enemy fleet detected something. Their formation adjusted slightly, like they sensed a change in the environment. But they didn't know what. Azad's stealth mode still kept them invisible to enemy radar. However, Armin knew that once he made his move, there would be no hiding. The moment Azad fired or activated certain systems, the enemy would turn all guns toward them. For the first time tonight, Armin stepped outside onto the deck. The wind hit his face, cold and sharp. He looked at the sea dark, endless, quietened, felt the weight of responsibility pressing onto his shoulders. One ship, one captain, one impossible mission. But he didn't feel fear anymore. He felt clarity. This was what leadership meant. Not medals, not rank, not speeches. Leadership meant standing in front of danger when everyone else was behind you. It meant making the decision no one else wanted to make. He returned to the bridge and looked at the glowing radar screen. The enemy fleet had crossed the final checkpoint. In 10 minutes, they would breach the border completely. "Sir, what now?" an officer asked. Armin's voice was firm. "Now, we make history." He ordered the electronic warfare system to activate. Azad sent out a silent wave that disrupted enemy targeting sensors. Not enough to alert them, but enough to confuse their readings slightly. Next, he commanded the engines to shift into silent maneuver mode. Azad glided forward like a shadow. The sea barely rippled behind it. The enemy fleet remained unaware then. Armin gave the order that would change everything. "Bring rail cannon 1 online. Target the nearest destroyer." The rail cannon hummed softly. The crew watched in breathless silence as the system locked onto its target. Even from this distance, Azad could strike with pinpoint accuracy. This was not normal weaponry. This was something else entirely. "Ready," the weapons officer said. Armin's finger hovered over the command input. He hesitated for only 1 second, not out of fear, but out of respect. Firing first meant declaring that he had chosen to stand against an entire fleet. It meant choosing danger over safety, bravery over comfort, duty over self-preservation. He pressed the command. The rail cannon fired. The shot was almost silent, a streak of light traveling across the water faster than sound. It struck the enemy destroyer in seconds. A bright explosion lit up the night. Flames rose into the air, and the destroyer began to list to one side. The enemy fleet reacted instantly. Lights flashed. Alarms blared. All ships turned their radars toward Azod's location. "They've detected us, sir," Sana shouted. Armin nodded. "Good, let them come." The enemy fleet realized they were under attack by a single ship. At first, they thought it was a mistake, but then they saw Azad, small but fearless, standing alone against their entire formation. They turned all weapons toward Azad. In that moment, Armin felt his heartbeat steady. He looked at his crew. "Everyone stay focused. This is where it begins." Azod's systems glowed brighter. The engines roared softly beneath the floor. Rail cannons adjusted position. Defense shields activated. The decision was made. Armin, that had committed Azod to battle, night that had started as quiet observation, was now on the edge of becoming a legendary confrontation, a clash between one ship and an entire fleet. The spark had been lit. The storm was about to explode. And Captain Armin Qureshi stood ready, unbroken, determined to protect his people even if it meant standing alone against the darkness. When the message from the alien council appeared in front of Captain Rian, he stared at it for a long moment, unsure whether he should laugh or feel insulted. The message was short, direct, and painfully arrogant. They demanded his surrender. They claimed he had violated their territory. They insisted he drop all weapons, deactivate his warship, and present himself for interrogation. It was the kind of message sent by someone who believed they already won the fight. Rian could almost feel the smugness dripping from their words. But he did not react immediately. His crew watched him quietly, waiting for his command, his decision. They knew their ship, Solaris, was stronger than anything humanity ever built, but even then, fighting an entire fleet alone felt like madness. Yet they also knew something else. Solaris had survived things even they didn't fully understand. It had powers, layers of intelligence, and weapons that seemed to evolve every time they were used. Many called it the most dangerous warship ever created. Some believed it was more alive than machine. And now it stood alone against a fleet that was famous for crushing planets. Rian read the message again. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled, just a faint, tired smile. Not because he underestimated the enemy, but because he finally understood why the alien fleet had come in so confidently. They did not know Solaris. They had no idea what it was capable of. And they certainly didn't know what Rian had learned inside the ship. Knowledge nobody on Earth knew. Solaris was not just designed by humanity. It had been rebuilt, reshaped and enhanced by something far older and far smarter. The alien fleet, with its thousands of ships, thought they were hunting a single man. But they were unknowingly stepping into a trap they could never predict. Rian gave the order calmly. "Prepare the ship for combat, but do not strike first." He wanted the aliens to make the first move. He wanted their confidence to break itself. The crew rushed to their stations, but none of them shouted or panicked. There was fear, yes, but there was also strange excitement. They trusted the ship. They trusted Rian, and deep inside, they felt this battle would be remembered for centuries as Solaris drifted silently in space, surrounded by a formation of alien warships stretching farther than the eye could see. Rian closed his eyes and focused on the hum of the ship. Solaris always had a sound, a kind of heartbeat, slow and steady. When danger arrived, the hum changed, becoming deeper and sharper, almost like a living creature waking from sleep. It was doing that again now. He felt it through the floor, through the walls, through the air itself. Solaris was preparing, not because it was ordered to, but because it sensed the threat. The alien fleet sent another message, this time more aggressive. They warned him that they would open fire if he did not surrender. Still, Rian made no move. The crew whispered nervously. Some wondered if they should respond. Rian simply stood still. He waited until the final countdown started in the alien broadcast, and when the countdown reached 0, the first beam of energy shot toward Solaris, a blinding white-hot spear of destruction, powerful enough to vaporize large cities. The beam hit Solaris directly. For a moment, a huge flash lit up the darkness of space. The alien commanders, watching from their screens, began celebrating, convinced the human warship had been destroyed. But the light quickly faded, and Solaris stood exactly where it was, not even scratched. The attack that should have torn it apart had been absorbed completely, as if the ship had swallowed the blast. Inside Solaris, the shadows on the walls flickered and moved. The ship's defensive fields recharged themselves instantly. Rian watched the energy readings rise to levels beyond anything he had seen before. It was as if the ship was feeding on the attack, turning it into strength. His crew glanced at him, wide-eyed, whispering in awe. Solaris was not just resisting the enemy, it was adapting. The alien fleet, confused and shocked, fired again. This time dozens of ships shot beams and missiles. The space around Solaris exploded with light and smoke, but when the chaos cleared, the ship still floated calmly, untouched. Not a single weapon had pierced its defenses. Some alien commanders hesitated, unsure whether they were witnessing a trick or facing something beyond their understanding. Rand finally gave a simple command: return fire. Solaris responded instantly. A soft vibration passed through the ship, and then a single pulse of energy shot outward. It was small, almost delicate, compared to the massive blasts the aliens had used. But when it reached the nearest enemy ship, that vessel did not explode, it simply vanished, disintegrated into dust. No fire, no debris, just silence. The alien fleet froze. They had seen weapons that destroyed ships before, but never a weapon that erased a ship from existence so cleanly. Solaris fired again. Another enemy ship disappeared, then another. The aliens panicked and scattered, abandoning their formation. They changed strategies, switched weapons, tried to outmaneuver the ship, but Solaris adapted to each attempt. Every time the aliens launched a new type of missile or beam, the ship shifted its shields, changed its frequency, or redirected its power. It was learning in real time, growing smarter with each second. Inside the alien command ship, arguments erupted. Some wanted to retreat, some demanded they keep attacking. Others insisted they had to capture Solaris at all costs. Their confusion worked in Rand's favor. The more disorder they created among themselves, the easier it became for Solaris to break their defenses. The next wave of attacks came in a wild, chaotic storm. Hundreds of weapons lit up space, trying to overwhelm Solaris with sheer volume. The ship reacted by unfolding its hidden wing structures made of dark material that looked almost liquid. The wings stretched wide and created a dome around the ship, a shimmering barrier that pulsed with shifting patterns. Every attack that struck the dome dissolved like water hitting fire. The crew inside Solaris stared in disbelief. Many had never seen the wings activate before. They were rumored to be part of the ship's hidden technologies, something even the engineers on Earth did not fully understand. Now the wings glowed, brighter, channeling energy through veins of blue light that ran across the ship's hull. The dome expanded, and suddenly, everything inside it slowed down. Enemy missiles froze mid-flight. Energy beams bent away. Even the alien ships near the edge of the dome slowed, their engines struggling. Solaris was controlling space itself. Rand did not celebrate. He stood firm, watching the battlefield with steady eyes. He knew power like this came with danger. Humans were never meant to control such abilities. If Solaris ever fell into the wrong hands, no empire in the galaxy could stand against it. That thought weighed heavily on him. Even as the ship continued its impossible dance through the enemy fleet, the aliens finally broke. They started retreating, abandoning the battle completely. Their ships fled in all directions, desperate to escape the warship that fought like a god. Some ships were too damaged to run, others crashed into each other in panic. Solaris chased none of them. Rand had no interest in slaughter. He only wanted to end the threat. When the silence finally settled and the last enemy signal faded, Solaris dimmed its lights. The wings folded back into the hull, the hum softened again. The crew exhaled loudly, some crying, some laughing, all overwhelmed by the miracle they had survived. They weren't just alive, they had defeated a fleet that could have destroyed nations. Rand took a deep breath. He looked at the stars outside the window and felt the weight of what had just happened. The universe would never be the same now. News of this battle would spread like wildfire. Empires would talk. Leaders would panic. Everyone would wonder how a single man and a single ship managed to crush an entire fleet. But Rand knew the truth. Solaris was changing. And so was he. And whatever waited for them in the next part of their journey would be far more dangerous than any fleet they had faced today. After the battle ended and the alien fleet disappeared into the cold darkness of space, Solaris drifted silently. For the first time since the fight began, the crew allowed themselves to truly breathe. Many sat in their seats, shaking softly as the weight of what happened settled in. Others stared at the screens, still expecting another wave of enemies to arrive. Rand did not sit. He stood at the center of the command deck, his hands resting lightly on the rails, his eyes fixed on the endless void outside. Something inside him was growing heavier by the second. The victory felt different, not like something to celebrate. It felt powerful, dangerous, and unsettling. It felt like the universe had just noticed them, like eyes they could not see were now watching Solaris with growing interest. Rand sensed it deeply. He knew this battle wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much larger. The ship itself seemed to sense his thoughts. Solaris hummed in a quiet, strange rhythm, not in danger mode, but not entirely calm either, something in between, like it was thinking. Rand had spent months inside the ship, learning its systems, its secrets, and its personality, if it could be called that. He knew Solaris wasn't ordinary. It wasn't just advanced human engineering. It was part machine, part mystery, part something much older than humanity. And today, it had shown a level of power even Rian didn't expect. He walked slowly through the deck while the crew waited for instructions. His steps echoed softly. Everyone watched him, trusting him to decide their fate. He finally said they needed to check for any remaining signals, scan the battlefield, and repair whatever could be repaired. The crew moved quickly to follow his commands. Grateful for the sense of direction, Solaris began scanning the ruins of the fight. There were no enemy ships left within range. Only tiny fragments of metal and dust floated around. But then something unexpected appeared. A very faint signal. Weak, almost dying. Rian leaned forward, narrowing his eyes. The signal was coming from the edge of the battlefield, from something small, something barely alive. He ordered Solaris to zoom in and enhance the image. The screen displayed a broken alien escape pod, drifting without power. Inside it was a life form injured, barely conscious. Rian recognized the species by its armor markings. It was one of the enemy officers, maybe even someone with high rank. The crew waited for Rian's reaction, expecting him to ignore it. After all, the alien fleet had tried to kill them. They had demanded his surrender and attacked without mercy. But Rian made another unexpected decision. He ordered Solaris to retrieve the escape pod. His crew stared at him in confusion. One of them asked softly why they were saving an enemy. Rian said that sometimes the answers you need come from places you don't expect. And right now, they needed answers why the alien fleet attacked, why they were so confident, and what they feared. Solaris extended mechanical arms and gently pulled the escape pod inside. It was placed in a containment chamber. Medical drones surrounded the alien, scanning and treating its wounds. Rian entered the room alone, leaving the crew outside. The alien opened its eyes slowly and stared at him, confused and frightened. It expected death, not help. Rian didn't speak immediately. He waited for the alien to understand where it was. Finally he asked why the fleet attacked so aggressively. The alien hesitated, then answered that it wasn't their decision. They were ordered to destroy Solaris at any cost. Rian asked why. The alien's expression darkened. It said Solaris was feared across multiple star systems, long before humans discovered it. If the stories were true, Solaris was not built, it was found, and the species that originally owned it were wiped out by their own creation. The council believed Solaris was too dangerous to exist. Rian felt a chill run down his spine. He had suspected Solaris was more than a human-made ship, but this confirmed it. He asked the alien what the council planned next. The creature looked at him with worried eyes and whispered that the council would not stop. The fleet they sent today was only a scouting force. The real weapon, the real army, was still gathering beyond the edge of known space. Rian stood quietly, absorbing the information. The alien suddenly coughed and collapsed, too weak to continue. The medical drone stabilized it, but it would need time to heal. Rian left the chamber with a heavy heart. He returned to the command deck and informed the crew of what he learned. Panic spread through some of them. If the fleet they destroyed was only a small force, what would the real army look like? How would they survive another attack? But Solaris hummed again, louder this time, almost like it was responding to their fear. The lights shifted into soft blue, calming the crew. Rian understood the message. Solaris was ready. It had more secrets, deeper systems, locked compartments, hidden technology yet to be unlocked. The ship had only shown a fraction of its power. Rian felt a strange connection with the ship, as if it was inviting him to explore further. He placed his hand on the main interface. Solaris responded instantly, opening a hidden pathway inside its digital map. A new area appeared, something Rian had never seen before. It was a chamber buried deep within the ship, locked behind layers of encryption. Solaris showed it to him willingly, as if it believed he was ready. Rian ordered the ship to guide him, and he left the command deck, walking alone through the corridors. The deeper he went, the more the ship changed around him. The walls looked different, more organic, almost like part of a living organism. He heard faint whispers of energy, like distant voices speaking in frequencies his ears barely understood. When he reached a sealed chamber, the door opened automatically at his touch. Inside was a sphere floating above a platform, glowing with a soft white light. It pulsed in slow waves, like a heartbeat. Rian approached carefully. Solaris projected information into his mind directly. The sphere was the core, the heart of Solaris. It wasn't built by humans. It was a fragment of an ancient intelligence far older than any species known today. It had chosen Earth, it had chosen Rian, and it had chosen now. Rian asked why Solaris revealed this now. The ship responded by showing him visions, images of distant galaxies, destroyed civilizations, ancient wars, and a shadow spreading across the stars. The enemy the council feared wasn't humanity. It wasn't even Solaris. It was something else, something rising again, something powerful enough to threaten entire star systems. Solaris was originally created to stop it, but the original creators failed. Now that danger was returning, Rian felt the weight of the truth. Solaris had awakened because the universe needed a protector, not an army, not a fleet, one ship capable of standing against impossible odds, one ship strong enough to fight what others could not. He asked Solaris if humanity could survive what was coming. The ship's lights dimmed, then brightened slowly. The message was clear. Humanity could survive only if Solaris stood with them. Rian placed his hand gently on the sphere. He accepted the responsibility, even though it terrified him. When he returned to the command deck, the crew immediately sensed something had changed. Rian looked different, calmer, stronger, more certain. He told them they weren't alone in the fight. Solaris had chosen them, and now they had a mission greater than defending themselves. They were going to protect not just Earth, but entire civilizations. The crew looked around, feeling the ship hum with renewed strength. Some of them smiled, others swallowed in nervous fear, but they all stood straighter. They trusted Rian. They trusted Solaris. Rian ordered the ship to set a new course toward the edge of known space, toward the rising threat. Solaris turned silently, its engines lighting up like newborn stars. The ship accelerated faster than any human vessel had ever moved. In moments it vanished into the darkness, heading toward the unknown. Behind them, the universe whispered of war. Ahead of them, destiny waited. But aboard Solaris, there was no fear, there was only purpose, and so the most powerful warship ever created began its true journey, not to conquer, but to protect, to stand as the single light strong enough to challenge the coming darkness.